Our first speakers, the FinTech Innovation Lab.
Thanks, Eddie. Thank you, everyone. My name's Samad Masood. I am the program manager for FinTech Innovation Lab London, which is a program that's been set up by Accenture with its banking partners in the City of London to bring innovation and FinTech innovation, new technologies, to financial services institutions. I'll run through it quite quick because we've got a lot more interesting things coming from Ian and Adam here. I'm sort of the boring bit. So this rather complicated Venn diagram is basically just showing you what this program is trying to achieve and the three sort of key pillars. We're bringing FS institutions here, and you see some of the organizations that we've got signed up already with the sort of tech incubator, venture capitalist community, and also we've got the sort of civic bodies around London and UK government also supporting this. And it's really about bringing, creating some innovation in London that is for the financial services industry. The program runs it's open now for applications, and it runs until March next year. If I can just give you a quick overview of what we're sort of looking for. We're looking for companies which are generally, of the startup category. You have to have at least technology that is at beta stage. But what we're really looking for is companies that could really benefit and achieve the next level of growth through a program such as this, where they are mentored by our banking partners. So applications need to be in by 1st of November, and once companies are shortlisted down and then selected by the banking partners and the venture capital partners that we have involved in the panel of judges, we'll take 6 companies forward. And between January and March, those 6 companies will be working in a state-of-the-art shared workspace, yet to be announced where that is, but and that will be for that 3-month period. They'll be working with their mentors. Each company should have at least 1, if not 2 mentors from different financial services institutions to help them take the technology they have, or the product they have, or the idea they have, and basically testbed that with the financial services institutions, while also getting some advice. We'll take some questions at the end, if that's all right. But while also taking some advice on business planning and the commercialization from our venture capital partners. The final date we have is basically on the 20th of March, where we have an investor day where each of the successful companies stand up in front of a public audience of people from the industry, from the investment community and the media, to pretty much pitch and advertise their business, what they've learned from the program and what they've been able to achieve. Hopefully that will lead on to things that will help grow their business, either through investment or maybe client engagement with financial services institutions. So that's a quick, rough overview. We're going to take some questions a bit later. I know it might be a bit confusing and a bit much. What I really want to do is introduce Ian, who has worked with the program in New York, which we've run it there for 2 years, and is also one of our key mentors and supporters here in the London program, to give you a bit of a flavour of the sort of things that we're doing and how it works.
Thanks, Samad. I think I'll just give you a quick insight. I was a chaperone in the New York FinTech Innovation Lab. New York's been running for about 2 years. It's, as Samad said, it's kind of the perfect sort of storm of what you want in terms of banks being involved, venture capital firms being involved, and then, getting the whole ecosystem involved with New York City Investment Fund and Accenture, who were the 2 groups who really got the program going in New York. The key difference, I think, which made sort of year 2 much more successful for year 1, over year 1, was the introduction of chaperones. So in year 1, a lot of the banks were helpful, but there was no necks on the line, should we say. So in year 2, the organizers decided that if they introduce chaperones, so I was a chaperone, for example, it puts someone's neck on the line. All the chaperones have to report back to the senior sponsors at the end of the program on the chaperone day. It helps all the senior sponsors understand what's happened with each of the companies as well, which gives a overall visibility for each of the companies. And then in addition to that, it means, as I said, someone's neck is on the line. So interesting, fun for everyone else. But anyway, the other thing I thought I'd mention is that obviously when people think of fintech, they think algorithms, trading systems. The lab is about a lot more than that. It's aimed to be something that, financial services companies use a lot of technology. And often the companies that come through the lab best are companies that can be used across a number of different areas, and across a number of different banks. So where something is highly competitive and differentiating, it's often not the best candidate. The candidates that are good are ones that can be adopted broadly. So that's something else I noticed. It's not just about algorithms and trading systems, it's about any company that's applicable to a financial services client base. I think Samad talked a lot about the ecosystem and the importance of the ecosystem. I think it's fairly obvious as to why London is a great candidate for this lab. I think it's fairly obvious as to why New York was sort of one of the founding areas for this, and why the sort of extension is fairly natural. If you talk to anyone here who's involved, like Steve from Euclid, or you talk to Nigel from Technology Strategy Board, they can lay out some very clear cases as to why fintech is so important to London. I thought I'd then move on and quickly talk about some of the sort of companies we've had come through, so you see some of the focus areas over the last 2 years. So if you think low latency is very important for financial services, we had Hanwick Associates come through in the first year in New York. A company called Lendo came through with social credit scoring. Quite an unusual but very interesting concept, especially in places where there are no official credit scores. Supplier risk management, there was a company called CB Insights. One of the interesting things to understand about the program is you come into the program, if you get through to the shortlisted stage, everyone who's shortlisted will get to spend time with a selection of very senior people from the banks. So you're talking about CTOs, CIOs from the banks, heads of infrastructure, heads of development, and they'll have time to pitch directly to these guys. I think the pitch is 30 minutes, is that right? Yeah. And if you look at CB Insights, they made it into the program. Even if they didn't make it in, that 30 minutes was very beneficial to them, because they realized on the way in they thought they were about credit scoring and risk management for creditors. They walked out of the room after 30 minutes realizing that the bigger opportunity was around supplier risk and supplier risk for the banks. So they walked in thinking one thing, walked out thinking another. Another company that was very similar to that was in the payment space called Billguard. Billguard walked in with one idea. They walked into the program with one idea of what they would do. And then they walked out realizing that, hang on a minute, if we just change our model slightly, we'll actually be much more successful. And they have been since. Other companies that have been through Visual Market was around end user mobile. They walked in as a consumer play that was sold in the iTunes store. They walked out with an enterprise offering. Looking at the big data analytics space, very popular last year. IDO Search, very interesting company, Digital Reasoning and Centrifuge, all walked in out of different verticals. So they walked into the program, a lot of them, quote unquote, had appeared out of Langley, shall we say, and walked in and came out as financial services offerings. I'll give you a good example. If you think of Digital Reasoning, when they started the program, one of the entertaining points was when they described an asset, they meant someone who was working very quietly abroad somewhere. When they walked out of the program, an asset was a completely different thing. The last, but possibly one of the most interesting companies, the company I actually mentored myself as chaperone, was a company called True Office. True Office do something very interesting. They do gamification of compliance training. As of, I think about 2 weeks ago, we've rolled this out to about 10,000 people in Morgan Stanley. About 10, is it? Adam is the CEO and founder, and he's here as well to talk to you. So I'll pass on to Adam.
Thank you. So our company, True Office, was one of the 6 companies chosen from the hundreds for the program in New York. We just graduated on July 18th and went through the whole cycle. So for us, our experience was nothing short of extraordinary. We were able to take what I think anybody would consider a 24-month sales cycle and compress it into 90 days. We took a broad-based suite of mobile applications, which were being beta tested within Fortune 500 companies, and then we brought them into the financial services sector. We specifically worked with Morgan Stanley, Barclays, and Citigroup. And over the course of a very fast 90 days, we threw all of our resources at these banks, and we were able to create new applications to test with vast employee populations within the banks and get data back on what our performance was like, which was excellent. And we were also able to build out our platform architecture with some of the best, I think, best minds in enterprise architecture, mobile, and security. So what I'm trying to say, in other words, is that the banks were not only participating in our product development and technology roadmap development process, they were really driving it for us. So, I mean, a good example of that is in one day within Morgan Stanley with Ian, we were meeting and laying out our architecture with their CTOs, heads of security, and heads of mobile applications within, I think, a 4-hour period. It completely changed the course of our company to the point where now we are in commercial discussions with most of the banks. We've been approached by for investment by several of the banks, and we are now creating a subscription service for the entire street to basically consolidate their compliance spend and use TrueOffice as a platform. So I can't think of any other program in terms of these sort of accelerator-like programs that is well run. Accenture was amazing, and Accenture, oddly enough, Accenture's our longest sales cycle, actually, compared to the banks, to be honest with you. But that's another conversation. But there is absolutely no replacement. I mean, you're coming in at the highest levels of the banks, and we had access. It was like, I mean, it's hard to say because these are banks, but it was like the red velvet rope was open and we were in, and it was amazing fertile period for our company, and it's transformed it from something which is beta, which is something into a commercial company with just tremendous growth in the financial services sector, let alone just with the 12 banks we worked with. So I'm here afterwards to answer any questions and share my candid experience with the program. I'm a huge fan and very grateful to Ian for being an amazing chaperone, and also Accenture for putting this on.
Okay, thank you very much, guys. Do we have any we do have some questions. Remember to talk into the mic, please.
I'm very surprised to hear the structure of the program that you have in place, and I would like your comments on a very straightforward observation. If you think about the social mission of the alternative financial player, you would say that you are out there in order to recreate or to provide an alternative to the current financial system. This means that innovation needs to happen outside of the current financial system, outside of the current mindset. If you bring innovators that are currently trying to build up a kind of prototype to create something that is new, and you take those people and you put them together with a mentor who is someone who has already been in a bank setting for tens of years, you will end up with that prototype or that company, in just taking forward the vision that already exists in the banks. So how do you comment on this aspect?
I mean, I might first say that the alternative, you're happy, people have been trying the alternative, which is to not have access to banks for a long while, and they have various levels of success, this program is just one way for companies to have a chance to meet, as you say, removing the red velvet rope and getting that access if they find that it's of use. That's an option. So I mean, I think there are companies that benefit from that access, depending on the stage of business that you're at or your technology, or if you don't have access at all to the networks within financial services, this could be a great program for you to be able to get that access.
So just one more question. What's your social mission? What this project wants to do for the society?
There's two objectives that this is there's two objectives for Accenture here, and one of them is very much a social mission. So the first objective is for us to provide innovation to the banking community, of which we are a big stakeholder as a supplier. The other objective is for us to encourage investment, encourage growth in the technology industry in London, and specifically in the FinTech industry in London, ultimately with the aim to grow the economy in this area and to grow jobs.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, with that on, do you want to ask a question?
If we're not going to make the November the 1st deadline, are you going to run this again, and what will be the next deadline?
I should say the application form is really not that difficult. So if you're thinking, I'd give it a go. I'd go to the website and check it out, because it's not that bad, and you can get in touch with us. There's an email on the website. We can help you out. But yes,
I just an anecdotal story is that I met Maria Gotch at a cocktail party in New York the night before the application were due. I was on a Virgin flight from New York to San Francisco and did the application in the air, because I had nothing. I had other stuff to do, but I thought I wouldn't be distracted, and really just watch a movie actually. But I did the application, and we kind of went back and forth with some people at work and put it in, and I was able to do it in 4 hours, and it's literally just been transformational for our company. So I would really have a go at it.
yeah. The hope is that we'll be running this on an ongoing basis, yes. But I think you should try and hit the deadline. Thanks.
Okay, we have one back here.
Hi, I'm Bailey from Funding Options. I've just got a question. It looks like a great opportunity for a startup like ours. What's the interaction between the New York Startup Innovation Lab and the London Innovation Lab, or what's it planned to be?
Still you.
So to give some background, Maria Gotch is the chairman of the New York City Investment Fund, who set up the FinTech Innovation Lab in New York with Accenture. The genesis of the London lab was very similar. It was the fact that obviously there's major financial clusters in both New York and London, and the opportunity to build a fintech cluster around that is something that's almost too good not to do. I had a conversation very early on with Maria to check she was comfortable. She completely 100% supports it, as does Accenture and the New York City Investment Fund. So London is supported by New York is supported by London. I think there will be cross-pollination opportunities. I think those will emerge as we go along. And I think maybe we look at, once each class graduates going forward, that they come and do a trip, maybe speak here, maybe speak in the New York equivalent as well, and maybe sort of try and do cross-pollination as we go along. I think once we've done year one in London, it'll become much clearer as to cross-pollination opportunities. The other thing to bear in mind is that a lot of the banks involved are global players.
Yeah.
So you're talking to, if you look at the list of banks, you've got, Citi's in there, Credit Suisse is in there, Morgan Stanley's in there, Goldman Sachs is in there. I'm going to forget a load of them. There's a lot of banks involved. They're all global players. So often getting introduced in London will help you in New York and vice versa.
I think we're sort of living proof of that. We're meeting about some Morgan Stanley business tomorrow, but all the banks are, every single bank that we worked with is global, and it allowed our product to really reach, we're dealing with regulatory environments in each country, but allow us to make those tweaks and adjustments to be able to really deliver this as an enterprise solution into the bank. So I think it's going to happen organically, and I also think that you and Maria will force us together too. I think it's going to be a combination of things, but I can't imagine that there won't be a lot of cross-pollination.
Hiya. I was wondering, what stage do you tend to prefer candidates coming in? I think you mentioned beta earlier on. Is it sort of two guys in a bedroom with an idea, or is it more post-customer revenue, or that sort of thing?
From my point of view, the key thing here, we're trying not to be too restrictive. In fact, you don't even need to be based in the UK. You only need to be based in London for the 3-month period. Obviously we don't want established companies coming along, this is an opportunity to reduce their R&D budget. The key phrase here is that the companies that will be able to use the program to take them to the next level of growth. So by that, you need to be the sort of size of company that is going to, grow enough through this that it could be significant for their future. So we're trying to change and really give a leg up to a lot of companies now.
I think if you look at the bank's perspective, I think we're happy to see anything at any stage. I think what we found coming out of the last 2 years in New York is that you get companies that are early stage focused on financial services. You often get companies later stage who are coming into that vertical. So we've seen, and that's a big win for us because you get companies that have some maturity but are new to the taxonomies and terminologies and methodologies of financial services. So it's a bit of both. I think we're interested in seeing both, and it shouldn't stop you applying. I think if you apply this year and you're too early, you can still apply next year. It's not there's no restriction there. So
I also think
sorry.
Our range so our 6 companies range from pre-revenue to about 10 million. I'm not going to mention the company, but I think there was a range, and that company was about 10 years old on the upper end. But I think that what Ian said is that you really you got to when it's really suitable for any stage, and when you come into these banks, you really sort of learn the inside jokes, and you really kind of learn actually the sort of the inner workings of it. And I think for all of the companies in our class, that was absolutely essential, because then you know how to sell, really.
I would just add one thing to that. The VCs that we've talked to come on as partners and to mentor and support in general ways have all been saying, oh, we can think of companies which are pre-investment stage for this, and this is something that could be a launch pad to get you to that sort of phase. So, But the key thing is that you need to come in with a very open mind. I think that the companies that were not selected, I heard, were a little bit more closed or felt like they wanted to kind of impose their solutions on the bank. I mean, the point is that to the first question is that I'm amazed how open the banks are to innovation. I mean, they are absolutely wanting more. I mean, we created graphic novel-like games in regulatory compliance, and we had, CTOs at Morgan Stanley and all these banks using them in their 50s and 60s. And there is an unbelievable, they just embrace it, but you need to go in with a very open mind, and you need to be slightly malleable, to be honest.
We'll just take one more. Do you want to take the last question?
Yeah. I think it's great what you're doing. I think it's really interesting. I guess the one thing that, having worked more on the banking side than the startup side, is how do you manage the risk that your programs become more like an outsourcing initiative than an actual startup initiative?
Not even close.
In the sense that, the only reason I say that is I came to the last event here and we had some venture capitalist guys and they were talking about the risk going into partnership with people like banks or data providers within finance, because they may not share the same exit kind of strategies that you might have yourself. Just an observation. I'm just wondering how you manage that risk versus a venture capital approach.
Curiously, and I think innovation is a competitive factor among banks. Yeah. So I think the desire to meet new companies is important. And I think banks take pride in being innovative over one another. So I think you get some competition there. I think obviously there's always a risk that, your customer shares a different view of your exit than your investor or you do. But that's with everything in life, I think. Adam, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the thing is that with the banks, what we experienced was a lot of companies that were my counterparts, and not necessarily in the program, but they tend to get put in like an innovation lab within the banks. They get put into like a fishbowl that people will walk by and say, that's a really interesting mobile billing company or whatever, right? Where with the program, what they did is that you are like, you find who the business sponsor is within the bank. I'm not directly answering the question, but what was incredible for us within the program is that you're actually really working with the folks who are writing checks to you. And you're not just put off as a sort of interesting little esoteric piece of technology in the corner. You're really front and center. And I don't know how else you could do that. And I don't know any VC that wouldn't want you to do that. You know what I mean? In terms of you really know your buyer, and your buyers are supporting you. And a lot of people were doing business during the 90 days. I mean, we certainly were. So.
I wouldn't have anything.
David Nordell. Double question. First of all, are there going to be any issues over IP rights? And Secondly, given that there's a certain number of banks that are going to be sponsoring this, are they going to have any sort of first preference rights for using the whatever technology comes out of the companies that are involved in the project?
I'll answer the second part and maybe pass the first part to Samad. As I said, one of the big opportunities here is for companies that can be used across a number of banks that aren't, that banks won't compete over. So those for that company, it's a great opportunity. There doesn't need to be a sort of, pecking order. I think if you're looking at it practically, often the people who get closest to a bank are the ones who sponsor, who mentor. So the ones who become the mentoring bank will often be the closest. So if there's something that is differentiating, often the mentor bank will take a first go at it. But there's no official planning in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say I can't answer your question completely, but I'm pretty sure that the way it's set up is that you are basically working as you would be with any sort of in a sort of test bed procedure where you're basically working with your mentors, meeting their contacts to understand the needs and requirements of potential customers, rather than co-developing technology or perhaps co-inventing technology. It's more an opportunity to say, well, this is what we've got, we think it might work like this, and then have some potential customers who could be down the line, people who would use this, saying, well, actually, this wouldn't work with us because our systems do this, and we already have something that does that, and it's too expensive to let go of. And getting that advice to then tweak and tailor what you have. And then you also have the mentorship of venture capitalists, a venture capitalist who comes from a technology background, who will then also be able to advise you on the commercialization issues around that. But it's not really a co-development scheme. It's a sort of, an opportunity to kind of test the water and tweak based on your potential clients' needs.
But I mean, in other words, the nature of the program is that they're looking for technologies and innovations that are solving big problems within the sector. They have no desire to build this themselves. I mean, they don't even want to come close to it.
I understand, but whereas the banks clearly have interest in absorbing new technologies. Sorry, where the banks clearly have interest in absorbing or working with new technologies in order to solve the problems they have. One question arises: what's the commercial interest of Accenture in this?
Well, I mean, Accenture's interest here really is to provide a platform to most of these banks, not all, but most of these banks are, significant strategic clients of ours. And this is a platform for us to show that we're providing innovation, we're providing new ideas that, we're not always in the best position to provide. But, what we do very well is manage projects. And so, this is something that we can do. But also, as I said earlier, there's also the objective of working with the local community, with the government, with the Mayor of London who's supporting this, to encourage more investment, encourage more innovation. We see this as a great opportunity. Like, I think a lot of people here see it as a very good idea. And the role we play is purely an organization and facilitating role. We have no role in recommending potential applicants, or we're not on the panel of judges. We're literally just facilitating for the whole program. So, we're trying to avoid any sort of conflict of interest there.
Eddie is giving me the eye to finish. So I'd say one or two things just in closing. If you're on a plane, there's no good movies, fill in the application. If you know a company that you think could be a good fit, or a company that would be interested, fill in the application. Spread the word. We want as many companies to apply as possible because we want to create a good ecosystem for the benefit of London. And as Samad and Adam said, we're around later on if you guys want to talk about it or chat. So.
Okay, thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.